we go. All right. It's good to see y'all. I don't know about y'all, but yesterday was so good. I mean, we stayed outside most of the day yesterday. It felt so good. There was no issues with the kids going to sleep last night, but they were tired. If we could just get a week of that, y'all, or 2 weeks of that, or maybe if we could just get a fall, maybe we could all say before the Lord takes us home that we actually experienced a real fall in South Georgia. More than our usual 2 seasons of summer and then light winter for a month and a half, right? All right. You mean this year? We got, I'm with you. 89 was, oh, believe me, I know it was enough. It's enough. I threw one at my dad. I mean, and I was glad I didn't hit him because of his blood pressure. It would have, I might have been more of an aggravation than doing. Well, it's good to see y'all. Before we get into our study this morning, if you will pray with me, please. Heavenly Father, Lord, we are grateful for another day that you've given us, just the many things that you bless us with, Lord, and we're grateful that we get to come, we get to study, and we get to glean things out and in your word that we can apply to our lives, Lord. We ask you, Lord, to be with Dennis Schuenoff and his family, Lord, and bless them and comfort them during this time. We ask you, Lord, to be with Uncle Gene and just help him to get some relief from the pain that he's going through, Lord, and that when he does get that doctor's appointment, they can find out a way to treat what he's going through, and he can get back to the health that he really wants to have. Just continue to be with everyone else, Lord, that's in our lives, and just bless them and help them in the many ways that they need it in your Son's name. Amen. So this this morning we're on lesson 5. We'll be in Deuteronomy chapter 9. All right. And so we're still on the second sermon that Moses would give in Deuteronomy. And still as he goes through with this, he starts to talk about the warning against self-righteousness. So Moses warned Israel against developing a spirit of self-righteousness as a result of their successful conquest of Canaan. Their victory over the Canaanites would come because of God's providential and miraculous help in verse 3, and consequently Israel should guard against thinking that the victory came because of her superior righteousness. That's one thing that's a struggle for us sometimes, right? And that is not taking the credit, correct? There's a story of a guy that worked at a museum, and his job was very simple. All he was to do was to take the people that came to the museum, or to the art gallery, and he was simply to take them to the art, show it to them, and then get out of the way and let them see it, let them look at it, let them view it. That was his job. Over time, as he started taking them to the artwork and whatnot, they would give compliments about the artwork, but the guy who was the guide, he started to think for some reason they were talking to him. And over time, he would start to comment back, well, thank you so much, and whatnot. He was, and one thing that people noticed is that over time, as he would normally walk away and stand away from the art, he started to inch closer and closer to the art, thinking that they eventually were there to see him and not the art. Until one day he completely stood in front of the very thing that they came to see. The very work that he was there to do, he concealed. And sometimes, my point about that story is that sometimes, y'all, as this warning is being given to the Israelites, a proper perspective is needed, correct? As Christians, we know and we understand that we are to glorify our God, yes? It's all about Him. It's not about us. And we have to be careful with that, y'all, because it's very much in our human nature to want to make it about us. That's something I think every single one of us, we all have an ego, correct? Everybody does. Some people have really big ones, okay? And some people don't, but we all have one. But we have to understand that when it comes to our relationship with God is we don't have an ego because there's nothing we can boast about, right? It's all about Him. Everything we have comes from Him. Everything that we've been given comes from Him. And therefore, there's nothing that we can boast about with that. And this is the warning that He's given. I'm going to give you this land, and you're going to take it. You're going to get it. You're going to be successful. But as this happens, be very careful that you don't forget your perspective. Be very careful that you do not think that this is because of you. You're doing this because you're this elite fighting force. Well, last week we talked about that, right? And really how amazing this victory is going to be because of their background and because they're not this well-trained, military force. It's not about you. It's about the God that's, giving this to you. And so there's a warning there about not thinking this is about you. And so Israel was not given Canaan because of her superior righteousness. Instead, the Canaanites were deposed from their land because of their great wickedness. Chapter 9, verse 4, do not think in your heart after the Lord your God has cast them out before you, saying, because of my righteousness the Lord has brought me in to possess this land, but it is because of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord is driving them out before you. It is not because of your righteousness or the uprightness of your heart that you go in to possess their land, but because of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord your God drives them out before you, and that He may fulfill the word which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Therefore understand that the Lord your God is not giving you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are a stiff-necked people. All right. So when you look at this and you think about it, He's given you this land. He promised you this land. It's going to be yours. And one of the motivating force of that was because of how evil these people were. Okay? All right? I'm making this covenant with you, but also the reason you're getting this land is because of how evil they are. Okay? Now, and not only does He say that they're evil, but He says you're not getting it because of something you've done, because even with you, you're a stiff-necked people. Okay? Anybody want to tell me what a stiff-necked people is? I'm sorry? Arrogant. Okay. Arrogant. Anybody else? Stubborn. Haughty. Okay. These people, there's probably a lot of words we could associate with these people, correct? They were kind of like the game last night in the first half. They were vexing me just a little bit. Okay? And they probably vexed God too. And so with it, there's nothing about this that they could claim ownership of as far as they did this. Now, you think about what God's saying here. I'm giving you this land because of how wicked these people are. Now, we know from different parts of Scripture that they did things that were abomination in the eyes of God. These people had these people that dwelt in the land of Canaan, they sacrificed their children to their gods, those type of things. These were a very evil people. And because of that, God is going to take what they have away from them. Okay? I start reading that, and I start thinking about our society today, right? How evil and how bad is our society? What are we seeing in society right now that makes maybe even your stomach turn? You know? What is it? How has society, some of y'all have been around a little bit longer than me. And so how have you seen society change? You know, I graduated in 97. In 1997, the kids today, they're like, oh my goodness, that was so long ago. You know, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. And then there's other times it does feel like it was that long ago. But I dare say some of y'all graduated a little bit before me. Culture changes, and it can change very, very fast. When I was in high school, we didn't have to the country as a whole, I can't remember a time where you're dealing with, some of the more horrible things that you see, whether it's transgenderism, what's the definition of marriage, how vile society has gotten where you can't even talk to people. how they want to, how people would rather. There was a story that came out yesterday about a government official that a person wrote them a letter and said, because of your views, I want to kill you, your wife, your children, everybody. Because of not because you've done something, not because of just because of your opinion. Culture changes very fast, and when I look at this and I think about God's attitude towards these people that was so wicked in His own words, how would He view our society today, or the world in general? I mean, we live here; we're citizens of this country, so we'll use our country as an example. But the whole world, y'all, is also something He's looking at as well. But from our society, would He consider us to be wicked? I mean, that's something that I don't know about you, but there's concern. I'm concerned about that, right? Because at a certain point, there's one thing about God. He is not a respecter of persons, is He? And nations rise and nations fall. And at what point does He say, "I'm done"? If I'm gonna, if I'm gonna tarry, if I'm not gonna come, if I'm delaying the return of, Jesus Christ, of my Son, if I'm going to delay it, does that mean during that point in time, are we, because of our wickedness, also going to have a similar fate? And that's something, that's the reason, y'all. That's one of the main motivations and reasons why we have to take back the culture that we have. We've got to do that. Because for a number of reasons, but that being one of the biggest. All right. Moses reminded Israel of her sins in order to overcome the spirit of self-righteousness. He reminded Israel of her rebellion at Mount Horeb or Sinai when she worshipped the golden calf while Moses was in the mountain receiving the Ten Commandments and other revelations from God. Israel built the golden calf. God was so angry with Israel that He determined to destroy her and make a great nation from the descendants of Moses. When Moses went down the mountain, he saw the idol, the golden calf. He took the 10 commandments and broke them. Afterwards, he returned to the mountain for 40 days and nights, during which time he interceded to God in behalf of Israel and was given another set of 10 commandments written on stone. Moses mentioned God's anger with Aaron, chapter 9, verse 20, and subsequent rebellions at Taberah in Numbers 11, where fire consumed those on the outskirts of the camp. Massah in Exodus 17, where God brought water from the rock the first time. And he goes on to list a couple more examples there. He concludes by saying, "You have been rebellious against the Lord from the day that I knew you," in verse 24. These people this is what we would call a track record, correct? If I was looking for evidence, if I was prosecuting a case and I was looking for evidence, was there a lot of evidence to prosecute these people? Yeah. One thing after another thing after another thing, God says that you are a rebellious people. Y'all, we are a rebellious people. Sin is simply that, rebellion against God. It's me looking at God and saying, I'm going to do what you tell me I shouldn't do. I'm just going to do it anyway. That's what sin is. Only because of Moses' intercession was Israel preserved alive in verses 25 through 29. He reminded God of His great work in redeeming Israel from Egyptian bondage, His covenant from the Pharaohs, patriarchs, and what the heathen world would say if He destroyed Israel. The Lord hearkened to Moses and forgave Israel, preserving her alive. F.C. Cook said in his commentary, "The people are reminded that all their blessings and privileges forfeited by apostasy as soon as bestowed were only now their own by a new and a most unmerited act of grace on the part of God, won from Him by the self-sacrificing mediation of Moses himself." And so God's ready to destroy these people. God's ready to be done with them and fulfill His covenant with the descendants of Moses. That's what He's ready to do. And yet Moses intercedes. Okay, and Moses is the one who his argument is enough to compel God not to do this. What does that say about Moses? What does that say about him? What does it say about his relationship with God? Very close. Very close. Because you know God had to be ready, right? And one of the things that, Moses, he says, well, if you do this, think about this, think about that. And God listens to him. God listens to him. These people owed a lot to God. They owed everything to God, but y'all, they also owed something to Moses. Moses loved these people. And this is a type of love that we are told about when Jesus describes how we are to love our neighbor and so on and so forth from that standpoint. Here's an Old Testament example of the type of love that we should have. Even though he got frustrated with them, even though he was aggravated with them, he loved them. And that's why he does what he does. And bless his heart, I hope I could say I would have done the same thing, but I don't know. My aggravation levels, I don't know if I got the patience of that man. I don't know. I might have been tempted to say, you know what, Lord, you're right. Let's just go ahead and do this. Come on. These people have made me have to wander through some wilderness for 40 years. Yeah. Because of the success of Moses' intercession, God renewed the law. In chapter 10, verses 1 through 5, new tables of stone were hewed on which God wrote the Ten Commandments. These laws written on stone were placed in the Ark of the Covenant, where all the time that Moses spoke. Another proof of God's forgiveness and acceptance of Israel was the establishment of the Aaronic priesthood in the service of the Levites in verses 6 through 11 of chapter 10. Writing in summary fashion without strict attention to chronology, Moses reminded Israel of the giving of that priesthood. All right. Now we move into admonitions to fear and to love God. Moses asked, what does the Lord thy God require of you in verse 12? In answer, he listed these responsibilities: fear God, walk in his ways, love him, and serve him. These responses should come from the heart and soul. Now, those are the things that are asked of these people to do, okay? And you think about that. Number one, fear God. What does that mean to fear God? What does that mean? Respect, okay? Respect God. Respect who he is, correct? Respect who he is. Respect, y'all, what he can do, right? Respect him. You know, that right there in itself has a long reach on it, okay? It has a long reach on it. Respect God. Well, how do I respect God? Well, I guess the closest thing for us is to think about our parents, right? Did your parents demand that you respect them? What would happen if you did not? Someone said, eventually I got back up. Respect, y'all. We live in a society, y'all, that I don't know about you, but respect is not something we see a lot of anymore because it's not demanded by parents too much. We don't want. If you don't demand respect, you're not going to be given respect, are you? And that's the problem. Parents don't want to be. We don't demand that respect. And so with God, he demands it because he's worthy of it. Are your parents worthy of your respect? Of course they are. Of course they are. You think about who they are and what they've done, right? All right? And maybe sometimes it takes some of these kids a little bit longer to really understand the extent to what parents have done for them. Well, our God has done a lot for us, and because of that, he's worthy of that respect. So they are to fear God. They're to respecting. Number two, they are to walk in all his ways. They are to walk in all his ways. Not some of his ways, but in all his ways. You know, that's one of the great paradoxes of this relationship we have with him, is that sometimes we want to negotiate, you know, I'm going to do this here really, really well, and I think that's going to cover me from not having to do these things, right? can we have that attitude with God? Not at all. Walk in all His ways, not some of them, not some that I think are okay and others that maybe for whatever reason I have some philosophical disagreement with. Okay? Walk in all His ways, what He says you do. Because, you know, we can argue and we can debate a lot of things from a secular sense, right? We can debate about our favorite football teams, and we can debate about politics, and we can debate about social norms. There's a lot of stuff we can debate about, but we can't debate about is God and His Word. It's non-negotiable. He gave it, therefore it should be respected, correct? So he says here, walk in all His ways, not some of them, but all of them. And then third, he asked them to love Him. He's worthy of that, y'all. Love Him, the greatest commandment that Jesus gave. What's the greatest commandment? Love God with everything, heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love Him. How, you know, do we really, really take time to think about, do I love Him? Do I truly love my God? Or has this just become maybe habit, so to speak? You know, I know I'm supposed to be at church on Sunday morning. I know I'm supposed, you know, to do these things. Have we ever stopped to really think, am I doing this because I've just kind of got into the habit? Or am I doing these things out of a love for my God? I'm here this morning, y'all, because I love my God. Okay? Because let me tell you something. It's real easy to stay at home and stay asleep, right? Especially when you've been up all night because the last 2 minutes of the second quarter was 38 minutes. Okay? It's real easy to stay at home and go to sleep, especially on a morning like this. You know, raise the windows, let that breeze blow in. Oh my goodness, that's some good sleep. But what motivates me to do what I do? Is it out of a love for my God, or is it out of just, this is what I do? Because there is a difference there. You know, I appreciate everybody that's here. I appreciate everybody that's going to be here for worship. You should be here. But what's the motivation? Is it because I gotta be here? Is it because, and you know, when you're younger, when you're a kid, you know, there were Sundays when I didn't, you know, Granny, why we got to go to church? You know what I'm saying? You know, this and that. I'm still, you know, those kids are still learning. They're still trying to figure it out. We, as adults, we should know. And so, what is my motivation there? He asked them to love Him. And then finally he says to serve Him. Okay? To serve Him. Now, how do I serve my God? How do I do that? What are some examples and some ways in which I can serve Him? Well, Jesus gives a clear example. If you want to serve Him, then serve others. Correct? You serve others. You help other people. You do those things. There's a ton of ways in which you can serve God. There's a ton of ways in which you can be a bridge to somebody. There's many ways in which you can show people Jesus Christ through who you are and how you deal with people. Okay? And so with that, fear God, respect Him, walk in all His ways, love Him, and then serve Him. And so those responses to those four things should come from the heart and the soul. Okay? The heart and the soul. It should come from those things. That should be our motivation. All right. In verse 13, he reminded Israel that obedience to God's commandments was for Israel's own good. Okay? It's for your own good that you should do these things. Because if you don't do these things, what's going to happen? It's going to get bad, right? There's going to be some consequences here. Okay? It's going to be some consequences. Can I get somebody to cut the ACs down just a tad? Anybody at all? Chris is going to get it. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. I was wondering if it was just me, and I saw all the fanning going on. There we go. He reminded Israel this for their own good. The Lord's commandments are not arbitrarily imposed restrictions to inhibit man's enjoyment of earth life. Instead, they are designed for man's protection, for man's own good. Okay, you think about that. Why should we do these things? Okay, why should we follow God's commandments? It's for your own good. You should do these things because the ends are going to justify the end of it. You're going to be in a better place if you do this spiritually, okay? It's for your own good. The earth and fullness, therefore, belong to the Lord. He had everything. Why should He choose Israel? Because of His love for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God made a special covenant with Israel in verse 15. Y'all, He did this, and He dealt with these people, and He keeps His covenant. He keeps His covenant because of a deep respect and love that He had for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's a God who keeps His promises, all of His promises. And that's something that we should understand, and we should appreciate the fact that here is somebody, y'all, that if He says it, it's going to happen. People will let you down. Some people will give you their word on certain things, and they break their word. They break their promises. God will never do those type of things. The reasons given for Israel's sincere obedience to the Lord's commandments are these. God is Lord of lords, a great and mighty God. God is impartial. God is a helper of the helpless. Because Jehovah is the God of the helpless, Israel should especially be attentive to the needs of the helpless, the widows, orphans, and strangers. Strangers refers to aliens dwelling in a foreign land who were unprotected and vulnerable. The commandment to love ye therefore the stranger was a higher ethic than generally practiced at that day. And so with that, in Mark 12 and verse 31, after Jesus says the greatest commandment is to love God with everything, He says, love your neighbor as yourself. He slides those two side by side. And so there's a deep respect here that should be given to help widows, to help orphans, and to help strangers. And y'all, I think maybe this is where we fall short sometimes. I think that in some ways, not only us, but I think Christendom as a whole, I think this is where we kind of fall short. I think we don't give enough emphasis to the orphans and the widows. I don't think we do that. I think there's more that we could do with that. But it takes more than one person or two people or three people. It takes the whole body to do this. And so workers are needed to be able to do this, and we should do better with this. Because of Israel's great God, she should fear the Lord, serve Him, cleave to Him, and swear by His name. He was their praise, who had done the great miracles which they had witnessed ever since the deliverance from Egyptian bondage. God had particularly blessed Israel by multiplying them from 70 who went into Egypt to the great multitude which was gathered on the plains of Moab in chapter 10 and verse 22. And then finally, based on the preceding admonition, Moses exhorted Israel to love the Lord and obey Him. He could appeal to Israel because she had experienced God's miraculous care, listing specifically her chastisement during the Egyptian bondage, the miracles of deliverance from Egypt, preservation in the wilderness, and the punishment of those who took part in the rebellion of Korah. Since they had personally witnessed God's work, Moses exhorted them to keep all the commandments. You have seen what He has done. You know who He is. You know what He says. Keep His commandments, okay? This pendulum's going to swing one of two ways, okay? If you keep your side of this covenant, it'll be better for you. So keep all the commandments. The blessings of obedience would be prosperity in the land of promise. Obedience is a very important thing, correct? Yes? Obedience is very, very important. Let me get over here to the New Testament. In Matthew chapter 7, if we ever were curious, of how important obedience is to our God, Jesus said in Matthew 7 verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.'" Obedience is very important, correct? It is very important. And some people cannot wrap their heads around that, okay? God has every right, y'all, to require the things He requires from us. And we, as His people, should be more than willing to be obedient to Him in that respect. All right. He ends this in verses 26 through 32. The Lord set before Israel the blessings of obedience and the cursings of disobedience. When Israel would come into the land, they were to gather in the valley between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. The blessings of obedience were to be read to Israel from Mount Gerizim, and the cursing of disobedience to be read from Mount Ebal, while Israel was gathered in the valley between two mountains. Now, I want you think about that visual there, okay? Both of those are going to be read to the people as they are all gathered as a whole, okay? What's the motivation here? What's the motivation here? Why do it in this type of scene? One from one, one from the other. Here's your blessings, here's your curses. Why do you think that it's orchestrated in this manner? Do we as a people, do we remember moments? Yes. Can you remember back to various moments that you've had in your life that meant that they really stood out to you for various reasons? Of course. Does everybody remember when they were baptized? Okay, I hope so. Everybody remember who baptized you? Absolutely, okay. Does everybody remember, parents, do you remember when those children were born? Do y'all remember that? Okay, there's certain things you're never going to forget because it's implanted in your mind, okay, because of the magnitude of the moment, right? The magnitude of the moment. So I remember somebody, I remember one of my grandparents, y'all, and my grandfather that's passed, he told me one of the most surreal moments that he still remembered was the day that JFK was shot. Like today he could still remember the time, he could remember the channel, he could remember all of it, and he could also remember like what happens next, right? Because there was a lot, they were terrified. I remember people who remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Y'all remember that? That moment where I believe it was Khrushchev sent the ships in. There was a blockade of Cuba, and all the people knew was that they had nukes and we had nukes, and if this goes the wrong way, this can turn bad real quick, right? And South Georgia ain't that far from where this was happening. And so I think everybody was trying to find pots to put on top of their heads. I don't know. But I know a guy that was saying that we thought this was the end. This moment, to this day, we could remember, this happening because it was so important. Well, you look at this moment for Israel, all right? On this side, on this mount, you're going to have, I'm going to read all the blessings. If you do this, this is how this is going to benefit you. However, if you don't, here it is. Here's the other side of this coin, okay? Blessings, cursings. This is going to be a moment that's created, so hopefully you remember this, okay? Because it will come true. Absolutely. Absolutely. You give them full knowledge, okay? When you're going to make this decision, right? And here's the good and here's the bad, right? And we do that as parents, right? We do it with our kids. You know, if you do this, you know, if you listen to me, all right, here's the good, okay? Or if you don't, maybe we hang too much on the negatives, you know. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen, you know. But we do that. And so now they got all the information they need. Now you just got to make the choice. You just got to make the choice. And that's what this moment was created for. All right, so as we continue into Lesson 6, in Part 4 of the second sermon, when the Israelites captured the land of Canaan, they were to destroy the places at which the Canaanites worshipped. The Canaanites apparently chose any high place, mountains and hills, as a place for worship, as if that brought them closer to their God. That was the thought process. They picked all the high places because from, I guess, just a relative mindset, it was higher to their gods. Their altars, their pillars, and groves designated for worship were to be destroyed. Their graven images were to be cut down. The place names were to be changed so that the idolatrous god was not tied to it. So from the description of that, what does that tell you? God wants any reference to these idolatrous gods wiped out, gone, erased. For what purpose? That's right. He wants them to worship only Him. But what could be a problem with that? If you don't get rid of all of these altars, all of these places, all these inscriptions, and if you don't get rid of these things, then they're still there, and that means what can happen? They could be led away. You start asking questions, right? People start asking questions. People start answering questions. All of a sudden, well, what about that, okay? It's an influence that's not needed because that influence is going to pull people away from God, okay? And so get rid of it. It's kind of like sin in our lives to it, as well, y'all. If I have a sin that I'm particularly having trouble getting rid of, correct, or struggling with, I struggle with this. Do I need to keep anything around y'all that's going to be an influence to maybe encourage me to fall back into that sin again? No. Get rid of all the influences, right? Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And that's what God's doing here. Get rid of all of this, okay? Because what's going to happen if you don't is you're going to get pulled over there to that. And He was right. He was absolutely right, as He always is. With us, as far as a practical application to our lives, those things that pull us away from God, y'all, get rid of them. Get rid of them. Cast them away from you. And so they were to destroy these idolatrous places. All right. In contrast to the idolatrous worship, practice of worshiping at any place, the worshiper chose to worship. The Israelites were to worship in a central location which the Lord would choose in verse 5. The entire nation was to gather together at the specified times for their worship. Any sacrifices and burnt offerings were to be offered there. Their tithes were to be taken there. Verse 8 implies that during the wilderness wanderings, Israel had not been attentive to worship solely at the tabernacle, but every man did whatsoever is right in his own eyes. When they entered the land of promise, God demanded that their worship be confined to the tabernacle in verses 9 through 12. He warned, "Take heed to yourself that you don't offer your burnt offerings in every place that you see, but in the place which the Lord chooses in one of your tribes." The killing of animals for table food was allowed in all your gates. Table food, unlike the sacrifices, could include some animals which were not allowed for sacrifices and could be eaten by the clean and unclean members of the family. However, the Lord specifically forbade Israel to eat the blood of any animal Further instructions allowing the killing of animals for food are given in verses 20 through 25, in which the Lord also commanded that the blood from the animal was to be poured out on the ground. The tithes and vows were to be taken to the tabernacle. The Lord admonished Israel not to forsake the Levite by neglecting their tithes. And so with that, two things. One, now there's a simple and one place designated for worship, correct? One place. And that is and that would be designated by God, okay? There's one place for worship, okay? All right? Now, so how do we apply that to us today? How do we apply that to us today? When I look at Paul, when I look at all of his wanderings and missionary journeys, when he went to a place, did he seek out the local church? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. For what purpose? Well, because they were to worship together, right, as one body. They were to be there together. And so with that, we are to come together and worship together, okay? We are to come and worship together. Now, Livestream has, Livestream's revolutionized everything, correct? When we're sick, when we're down and out, when there's those things that we know keep us from being able to come together, it's a great resource. It is. But should it just become the overall, that's just what I'm going to do? Not at all. Not at all. And we have to be very careful with that. That we haven't completely quit coming to worship together with the local body. Okay? That's extremely important. And technology brings easement. Easement brings complacency, and then we forget these things. We forget these things. So the Lord admonished Israel not to forsake the Levite by neglecting their giving, their tithes. You think about that and how it applies to us. We can't do practically for us, we can't do that. We got to give back to God, right? He expects that. He expects that. Even if we're out, He expects that. Okay? All right? Because that, and it's not just, y'all, it's not just, it's not just, how can I say it? This is about, this ties into my relationship with God, correct? I give back because, going back to what should be the inspiration and the motivation for everything in this relationship, and that is a deep love for Him, right? I'm not giving because, we might need a church van, or we want to get a slip and slide for the kids or whatever, right? That's not why I'm giving. I'm giving because I love God. I'm giving because I'm motivated by that deep love for God to give what I give. And whatever that is, that's between you and Him, right? That's between you and Him. Okay? He says, give out of love, give cheerfully, right? Give because you want to do it, but don't neglect that. Don't neglect that. All right. So, any final comments or questions before we shut down the class today? Yes, ma'am. It was. But even if you look in the New Testament, right, and you look at Passover and whatnot, you had Jews coming from very far distances, because you had people in the city that were coming from Greece, people that were coming from Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. So there was a long way to travel, and for Passover, and we see evidences of that with the people that we see in Acts 2 and whatnot, and the different groups that they're speaking to and whatnot. So any other questions, thoughts? 12. Yes. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Thank y'all so much for the comments and the questions, and we'll pick up in verse 29 next week. Thank you.